What's up, guys, and welcome to everyone's favorite show, Save That Pig!
Woo!
Woo! I'm one of your hosts, Julien, and Ivan, can someone tell us what the hell the rules are to this game?
So the rules are as follows. We're going to put up 4 pictures of pigs. You
Damn it,
all
I wasn't
vote
told
in the
that we
Twitch
need
chat, and, we're going to save one of those pigs. Everybody else is bacon.
We're saving one pig an hour if you guys call in at the toll-free number on the screen. Now, thanks, everyone.
Call in now.
Call in now.
Also, in the next 5 minutes, receive a free tote bag filled with the bacon of the other pigs.
Yes, it's going to actually be a tote bag made of paper so you can see the grease falling through. Ivan, I love bacon grease, but I'll tell you what I like more than that. It's when people write us iTunes reviews on iTunes, because that's where we get the viewership. If you go over to iTunes and give us a nice review, you can also download the podcast there if you subscribe on iTunes. Actually, you can download it anywhere else, such as SoundCloud and Google Play. But you could also illegally download the YouTube version of the show, which is in video form, because it's also on our YouTube channel. But thanks so much for tuning in to the Hungover podcast, also known as Save That Pig. Fun.
A joke I started and regret to this day.
Well, it's a great joke, honestly. I love it. Today we're going to be talking about... What are we talking about today, Ivan? I want to get this going now. Get it out.
What we're talking about today is the scientific budget.
I thought we were talking about science. Okay, sorry.
Science.
Yeah.
She blinded me with library science. I'm killing everybody's ears. They're literally leaving because of this. Anyway. We're going to talk about science and its relationship to funding and how Congress disobeyed Trump's orders with the general increase in spending everywhere, and how science will benefit, but also what are our ideas of scientific funding in the USA and where it should really be going, what the trends should be as we continue to evolve as a society, especially coming from you, Julien. I think your voice in this will be very important.
I know a lot about science. I'll tell you. No, I don't. I do have a knife. I don't know why I have a knife on my desk. I can't remember why it's there, but it's been there for a while. I will tell you, I am currently in graduate school, getting my PhD in chemistry. And so these sorts of changes in budgetary spending and funding do actually directly affect me as a scientist. So, that being said, it doesn't mean I know everything there is to know about, the government and how it funds things, but I try to keep up with it, as we will begin to talk about it. But first, Ivan, we start our podcast out every single week by asking each other, what sort of media have you been consuming, as this, YouTube channel started as a gaming channel, and what did you drink last night, because we love drinking.
Did it start as a gaming channel?
I don't know. I made that up. we don't play video games
anyway.
here.
I only play the one video game nowadays, and my heart and soul is devoted to Overwatch. But actually, I have been playing a little bit of The Witness. Because, as always,
that's
I'm a
such
little
an
behind.
old game.
I know!
And it's oh my god, it's a great game, I hear.
I figured out that I had purchased it on the PS4.
Oh my god, what a
So
sucker.
occasionally, when I get time,
I think it was
free.
I think it was free at one point.
It might have been,
and that's why you
paid for
download
it.
Oh, you. What a sucker.
And so I've been playing The Witness. Hey guys, surprisingly an interesting game. Hey, did you like Myth?
Got a 10 out of 10.
It's
like it was up for Game of the Year last year.
Did you like Myth but haven't played it in a while?
No.
Did you like Myth but also you've lost your CD and it doesn't run because you're not running MS-DOS anymore? Did you like Myth, but have missed out on playing Myth? Anyway.
This is a game for you.
The Witness is pretty fun so far. I'm enjoying myself. I don't really know what to do other than run around to different puzzles and solve them.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that. It's great to do while I'm listening to the Critical Role podcast.
Cool. Which
is the new podcast I'm obsessed with. A lot of people know what it is. It's a D&D pod. Mm-hmm. Also, it streams on Twitch on Thursdays, and it has a YouTube channel, blah, 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 blah. So it's a bunch of voice actors, including the voice actor for McCree, who's the DM, and they play D&D. It's pretty interesting. I really enjoy the thing. They just finished their 3-year campaign and started a new one in January. So
whoa, that's
I'm not
big.
going back to listen to the last one. I'm just starting the new campaign.
Yeah, no, why would you? That's too much.
Yeah, so there's that. And, Overwatch, I watched a movie this week.
Nice.
Believe it or not.
Nice.
Called The Killing of a Sacred Deer. It's not solo. This is Yorgos Lanthimos' movie that came out, I think, last year.
Okay.
And, as always, Yorgos Lanthimos, a Greek director. The previous film he worked on was with Colin Farrell in The Lobster. Mm-hmm. And so he brought Colin Farrell back again for this one. It's real weird, gets real fucked up, and it just gets increasingly dark and kind of comedic, but very dark. All of the dialogue is really, artificial and blunt and, specifically paced. But it's a pretty interesting movie to watch. A few pretty good performances. It's got Colin Farrell, Nicole Kidman, and the guy who played George from Dunkirk.
Oh, cool. Wow.
Yeah,
nice.
So I don't know. I recommend it if you're into watching a movie that's very different from anything else that you're going to see. It's available on Amazon Prime Video, so use that while you still have it and aren't paying exorbitant amounts for Amazon Prime.
And also, while you have Amazon Prime, go ahead and subscribe to my Twitch channel. You get a free subscription if you have Amazon Prime, and it's free to make a Twitch account. So go ahead and do that.
You can also use that Twitch account then to get access to D&D Beyond.
Yes, maybe just subscribe to them. I don't know.
Anyway, so that was me this week. I did go to the wineries again yesterday.
Nice. Very cool.
But I hit the standard ones, Ravines and Herman Weimer or
Herman
Weimer.
Yeah.
But this time when we went to the FLX Wienery, Laura's dad was with us.
Weenie Hut Juniors. Okay, yeah.
And we discovered that I finally figured out who runs it. And the guy who runs it was a Michelin star restaurant owner in Texas.
Whoa.
Who has a sommelier degree that 200 other people in the world have.
Okay.
And so if you go through...
How did he get that degree? How do I get that degree? What is the degree?
You study hard and take a very expensive test.
Okay.
And you have a very good palate. So those are the qualifications.
Okay. Just wanted to know.
I don't really know.
Okay.
I just know... I just saw the descriptor, or I read the biography of the dude. I don't know what his degree was. But he was also voted the top new chef by a very prominent wine society. He's American, I think.
He's American? All right.
He has a German wife, though. In any case, his wine fridge at this place is filled with, crazy wines.
Nice.
$2,000 wines or $50 wines. And you can search through it. And then he has a secret wine fridge, which is just an assortment of wines that he's collected, most likely. And you can just look through it and find what you want. But it's really interesting because you can get, a Chateau Petrus or, a fairly cheap New York, Finger Lake wine.
Well, I'll tell you, Ivan, the price of a wine certainly does not dictate how good it is in terms of flavor or complexity, and neither does complexity.
Chateau Petrus is pretty high quality.
I've never had it. I'm not saying it's not high quality. I'm just saying don't get caught up I'm not saying specifically you, Ivan, but in general, if you're looking for wines don't get caught up on how expensive the price of the wine is. Just look for a flavor that you enjoy, and then buy more of that wine or wines like that.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think is intuitive for that, thank God for my Skype.
Skype is fine. It works.
Itself, is that the movie Sour Grapes. I think I've spoken about it before, but it was a guy who comes into this very rich group of people and basically swindles them by faking lots of bottles of wine, and they don't want to be duped, so don't believe it. And it's very, like, you feel bad for no one, but you watch this whole thing, and it's a pretty interesting collection of people, and the story is really, really intriguing.
That's great.
Every single time you're like, what is... Every single time a question is about to get answered, a more important question arises in this documentary, so it's really, really well structured.
That's cool. I didn't know it was a documentary.
Grapes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Is that on Netflix or...
It's a 99-cent rental on Amazon and YouTube now. It was on Netflix, but I think it's gone out.
Do I feel better about giving money to Amazon or to Google? I don't know. Maybe I'll just pirate it off the internet, just to spite them. Allegedly, of course. No, I would probably just rent it from either of them. It's really not that expensive. Cool. That's all you want to talk about? I mean, that's a lot.
Me. What about you?
Look, for me, I'll tell you. I did a lot of things this week. Let's see, where do I start? I'm the gamer in the crew. Yvonne's playing the old games, all right? That doesn't mean I wasn't playing old games. I was playing Mega Man Legacy Collection 1 and 2. I believe we already talked about that. But another old game I played is currently re-released on the Nintendo Switch. It was a Sega Dreamcast game called Ikaruga. This game is a vertical space shooter. They have the small ship. It shoots a million bullets. This game is super cool, though, because it might be the best of these shoot-'em-ups ever made. And not to mention on the Switch, it's really cool. You can play it. You can turn the Switch vertically and then have the screen take up the entire Switch screen, which is really cool.
Oh, that's cool.
You could also do that on your monitor. They had that feature in the original. I think they re-released it on the GameCube. That's when I first played it. They had that feature back then, so you could have turned your CRT TV on its side if you really wanted to. And that would have been the end of your CRT TV. But this is...
Yeah, wouldn't that break tubes or something?
Yeah, like exactly. But it's a great feature to have regardless, all right? But now you can also get it on Steam and, do it with your monitor. But I think it's really useful on the Switch because it's super easy to turn the Switch vertically. And then pop off the Joy-Cons. So this game is really cool, though, because it's almost like a puzzle game in a way, in that you can switch the color of your ship, and there are two colors you can switch from, and the enemies shoot those same colors at you, and if you're the same color as the bullet, you will absorb that color and just power yourself up. And so you basically in this game, once you get to past the second level, essentially, the whole screen is just filled with bullets. And you have to, sort of switch it's called switching polarities, I guess, in the game. Switch your polarities, you have to manage that so you can get through the bullet maze that is on the screen. So it's a really cool game. It's incredibly difficult. And they do not give out... They grade you based off of how well you've done in the game. I beat the first level without dying, and I thought I was doing pretty well in terms of my score. I got a C+. So that's the kind of...
That's a real kick in the pants.
That is a real... That game is not easy. God damn. But I keep going back. There's only 5 levels, man. I keep going back. It's a lot of fun. If you're into shoot-'em-ups, I highly suggest getting that on Nintendo Switch. Or on Steam, it's cheaper on Steam. What else have I played the Mario Tennis Aces online tournament demo as well, and it totally convinced me to pre-order the game. That game was so much fun. I the last Mario Tennis game I played was on the GameCube, and that one was really, really good. But I hear the Mario Tennis games that had come out after that game were not so good. So the most recent one was on the Wii U called Grand Slam, I think, and it did not get such good reviews and things like that, so I never picked it up. This game, though, I wanted to play the demo, feel it out. The game is really stellar. You can actually technically play it with a GameCube controller because the Nintendo Switch had a firmware update that allowed you to plug in the Wii U GameCube adapter. So you can play any game with a GameCube controller on the Nintendo Switch, actually, which is pretty cool. But it just so, old school people, when it comes to Mario Tennis, probably played the GameCube game. You can now play it with a GameCube controller. So that might be worth thinking about if you want to get good at Mario Tennis. I'm going to be trying.
It looked really fun.
It's very fun. When you come by for Overwatch League Grand Finals, you have to check it out. There's also you got the tickets, right? He didn't get tickets. I just bought tickets. I'm taking my girlfriend to go watch people play video games. Oh shit. That's not good. That's a real great date for me. I'm gonna yell at Pine. No, but we'll have to do Pine. We'll have to play with the motion controls. I want to try the motion controls. It wasn't active in the demo, but the motion controls is a specific mode separate that should be cool. I think it would be fun to play. Aside from that, it's going to have a whole campaign, so it's a cool, sort of thing. It's the company the developer that makes the game is called Camelot, and they made one of my favorite RPGs called Golden Sun. Back in the day on the Game Boy Advance, and I love that company. So I think they're finally back in power. They can make the games they want to make, and they make Mario Tennis games and Mario Golf, I believe. The other thing I did was watch Battle Royale 2, the Japanese movie sequel to Battle Royale, which is the OG Battle Royale. Sure, that concept has been thrown around in fiction, probably a million times before, but this was the first movie adaptation. I believe it's an adaptation of a manga, or the first one is, and so basically, it's a really dumb story. But I guess grown-ups have forced these high school age students, I believe they're high school age, on an island, and they're forced to kill each other until one is left standing.
How
the
Japan
Battle Royale
has no problems with population and shrinkage. You know how they need to control their population?
Totally.
This is what the future holds for Japan.
And so after that, then there was Hunger Games, which was totally just a rip-off of this movie. And look, I'll tell you, I like the first movie so much because it was actually exactly like PUBG. They were pretty much flown in with no weapons, and they had to find all of their gear and be cool. And it also had the benefit of, they had that creepy Japanese schoolgirl that's trying to kill everyone, and they had all the anime tropes, is what I'm saying. It was great. The teacher who is totally pervy because all Japanese men apparently are pervy. I don't know. Go watch that movie. Do not, however... Well, you know what? I take that back. I erased that statement. I will edit it out in the end. That's totally... We're going to review Battle Royale 2 at some point because we are running out of podcast topics, and so we're just going to... Weekly. We're running out of podcast topics, so we really need to start reviewing movies, and this will turn into a movie review podcast in the future, perhaps.
We're going to call it the Hungover Movie Club.
Hungover Movie Club, yeah. So you guys can go check it out too. Battle Royale 2 is currently on Netflix, so it shouldn't be too difficult to access. But if you can't watch it because you don't have Netflix, I'm sorry, man. Then we can just review it for you instead.
Also,
yeah, Yvonne needs to
Hungover
see the movie.
Club is a
real thing.
Placeholder name.
Yes, someone get that
We're gonna
domain
come up
for
with
us.
A pun.
Yeah, we'll come up with a pun. But anyways, we'll probably try to fit some more movie reviews in, as we both love to watch movies. Yvonne more than I, obviously. And
you love to watch movies at home.
Yeah, no, I like to lay on a couch and, drink while watching a movie. That's one of my favorite things to do.
Speaking of which, I totally forgot the one thing that I drank a ton of this week that you told me to drink last week.
Yes.
These seltzers.
These spiked seltzers are so fucking good. I had 2 of them. I totally burned through our stash. I'm sorry, Nikki, if you're watching. We have no more spiked seltzer. It's my fault. It's not the cat's fault.
Super blasted.
You can get... Look, go find these things, all right, guys? Because this is the drink of the summer. I'm sorry. I don't care what you got your mojitos out here. You got your gin and tonic. Fuck that shit. Get the spiked seltzer. You don't even need a bottle opener. It's twist off. Did you know that?
What?
It's twist off bottles. Let's go.
Oh, I had the pop top cans.
Oh, you had the cans. Oh, I had the glass bottle. I didn't know they had cans. That's cool. That's even cooler. Very few carbs. You're hydrating because it's more water. And it's super alcoholic, 6%. And it tastes like seltzer. What more could you ask for? You can
Mine tasted like soju.
Yeah. Oh
my God.
Yeah, well, look, I'll tell you, I had 2 of those last night, and I was drunk. That was a great time. Yvonne, thanks for reminding about that, but I think there's something else we can talk about, because I don't know how to do segues. What is it? We're going to talk about the topic of the show.
Hey, Julien,
what are you
doing right now for your profession?
Hey, Yvonne, I study chemistry on a PhD level.
Oh, boy.
I'm in grad school.
So you do some research.
Fundamental research, yes, that is what I do.
We can talk about the fundamental funding of research. Funding of fundamental research.
That sounds pretty funny to me. I don't know what I'm saying. But yeah, we would like to discuss the various ways in which fundamental research is funded in the United States. I think that's a very pertinent topic to talk about, even though you may not see the effects of these types of research studies until further down the line. It is important to do all these fundamental research in America, as there are some really top-tier universities in America as well. Yvonne, there are the 2 large federal agencies that fund a lot of research at the university level, and even some corporate level research, I believe, are the NSF, the National Science Foundation, and the NIH, the National Institute of Health. I don't really deal a lot with NIH, so I don't know what the acronym stands for.
Yeah, it's NIH.
Yeah,
Health.
That makes sense to me. So there's also DOE Science, so that would be Department of Energy Science. They fund a lot of fundamental research as well. Particularly, obviously, in the energy sector of research, like battery research and renewable energy types of things. And, of course, there's NASA as well. But they're more of a self-contained organization, I believe. I don't think they fund too much on the university level. But, Yvonne...
Yo.
How is President Trump... what's his opinion of science? What would you say if you had to guess?
If I had to guess...
And welcome to the party,
Donald Trump
Brooke.
doesn't give a shit about science. What he cares about is building great big things so that he can stand next to them and say, hey, look at this great big thing that we built. I built that under my directive. I think that there's a lot of things that he alludes to or explicitly says in terms of restriction of Department of Energy, EPA, NOAA. So anything that revolves around protecting Americans from pollution or any kind of malpractice by businesses should be cut, as well as the fact that global warming isn't a real issue, that no one should research or do anything for it. Those are Trump's clear, plain as day, initiatives that he loves. And he also, for some reason, loves NASA.
Right. It's so strange. Well, I mean, it seems strange based on, the fact that NASA is a science based organization. And I guess that's the correct term to use to describe NASA. But it also makes sense in what you were saying, science. Trump likes large, fancy, shiny things. So NASA clearly provides him with his large, shiny spaceship. So that's probably, in a nutshell, why he likes NASA. But other than that, he clearly has no regard for anything related to science. Well, I don't necessarily want to say that exactly. But he definitely does not care about climate change studies at all, considering he left the Paris Agreement, which was really a bad thing. That was a bad thing. So here we have in the background, we have two plots. So you were trying to explain this to me. I'm sorry, I'm not an economist. Sorry, but this is basically NIH's funding for over the past since 1994. So the past 15 years, or sorry, 25 years. 25 years. I'm off by 10. Sorry. Look, I can do math, I swear, on a level that I can do math. So basically we can see, I know what math is. We have an increase in funding from 1994 to about 2004. And the bottom graph is more important as it's adjusted to inflation. And then, so obviously, a $1994 is very different from a $2019. And the most important thing is that after 2004, we're seeing a clear trend in a decrease in funding for NIH. So NIH funds a lot of cancer research and things like that, as you would assume.
Basic life science research.
As you would assume from the National Institute of Health. So that's really bad. And
the real big thing is that even though the budget is nominally increasing, which means the dollar amount goes up every year, it is not keeping pace with the inflation. So especially after the financial crisis in 2007, with the huge amount of dollars being printed, inflation increases dramatically. And you see that the funding has decreased steadily since 2004, but really, I mean, just like the amount that has been going down, it's crazy how much of that decrease has been reflected from the economy and then into the government budget. The one thing that we can see here is that the proposed budget, based on the budget cuts, was $34 billion. And the actual approved amount later is up to 37 from the Congress, the omnibus.
Right.
So it's actually a bit better than what we see here by about $3 billion. Sorry, easy to mix up those words, but big difference in terms of the amount of money. So it's not as dramatic as we think in terms of that decrease, but we do know that Trump told Congress to make significant cuts. So this graph that we see here is the yellow beige boxes are the proposed cuts to the budget of all science-based science and R&D based institutes across the U.S.
Yeah.
And you can see that there are huge cuts to the budgets proposed. So up to like the Department of Energy tech stuff to being cut by almost 50%. It's huge amounts of cuts, and the EPA's budget getting shredded. Right. What has actually happened is that the blue line is the official, like, final omnibus bill that was passed by Congress, which is in part a reflection of their willingness to pay everybody and increase the government budget across the board. And so what we see instead is increases. But the increases we have to keep note of, even if it increases in terms of percent change by X amount, it might not be able to keep up with inflation or increasing demands. Every year we have more scientists, more labs coming online or different things. But we also have the restriction of who's getting the grants, etc. So a lot of the time, even if there's slightly more money available as the pool, it's only being awarded to a few different people. And that's a philosophy of awarding grants, which is a slightly separate topic, which we can get into later, Julien, because I'm intrigued by your ideas on that. But we do see that Congress actually approved a lot of funding changes that increased budgets where Trump wanted to decrease them.
Right. So Divine Hailstorm in the chat says, isn't science more important than anything else? Depends who you're asking, Divine Hailstorm. I wouldn't say necessarily more than anything else, but it is certainly like top 5 topics of importance in America, I would say. So I mean,
if you look at how the budget is decided, the American budget is so heavily skewed towards spending on
military,
the military and defense department. It is crazy how much money goes into there. So if you judge America's priorities simply based on appropriation of government budget, it is military and defense. So the 2019 budget proposal was $686.1 billion.
Right.
The 2018 budget was $606 billion. To give a balance, the education department was 66.9. So that's a difference of about what? It was a tenth of what the whole budget was, basically. So it was 100% increase between the one and the other. Is that something like that? Am I doing my math wrong? Or is it 10% increase?
Wait, say the numbers again. Sorry.
It's 666.
666.
So it's 10 times larger.
Okay, yeah.
So the education department budget was 10 times smaller than the defense department budget. And while we, Divine Hailstorm, would most likely agree that science is an incredibly important funding, the overall oeuvre of the Congress is that the military is the number one thing to spend on. Now, that being said, there are a lot of Defense Department contracts that go out to scientific research.
Definitely.
So becoming a military scientist is kind of part of that. So you have obvious things like DARPA and other defense-based research and development. But my father is a cancer researcher, and he often actually does do some work with the Department of Defense.
That's cool.
So the DoD does fund or look into basic life science research.
I'll tell you, I went to a summit meeting, I guess, or it was like a conference for military research. It was literally, there were like 5-star generals there. I shook one of their hands. I can't remember his name. But it was all about military defense research. And my boss was supposed to go to it, but he couldn't go, and so he sent me instead. So I was oh wait, now that you're not there. Oh, okay. Let me just click on this. But yeah, so it's all right. But yeah, so I went to that, and I can tell you firsthand what they want, what they're trying to get people like me or university researchers to start. They will fund research if you're specifically researching materials that will lessen the load on the soldier. That's their number one priority. So soldiers, obviously, in the army specifically, they carry 50 plus pounds every single day for at least 8 hours a day. So they have a lot of weight on them all the time, and so that's one of the areas in which they are actively throwing money at to get lighter materials that do the same thing that they currently have, that serve the same function. Also, the Navy is constantly trying to make sure their boats don't corrode due to a lot of seawater exposure. So they want paints and coatings on their boats that will resist seawater. So someone who could come up with a answer for those things would get a lot of funding from the military, definitely.
And these are more materials science focused contracts or grants that would be available. We know that some of the priorities to the Trump budget in terms of defense increase is tightening up nuclear technology and as well as seeking ways to defend against greater nuclear armed threats. Apparently North Korea is one of these targets of increasing defense spending so that dealing with the issue of a nuclearized, nuclear weaponized North Korea. So there's a lot of that, but I don't know. It's crazy to me that so many of the ideas of like things that are long-term benefits to the society are getting short shrift based on these Trump priorities.
Exactly, yeah.
And the fact that Congress, which is traditionally very short-sighted for elections, etc., was able to overcome that kind of thing in a bipartisan way and increase budgets for long-term projects.
Right. So, I mean, it seems like, you were right in saying that the Congress seems to be trying to fund long-term projects, which is absolutely what we need right now. Our economy, depends who you're talking to. Our economy is either in good standings or bad standings. I know my dad was telling me that since Donald Trump was elected, people who have investments in the stock market have made a lot of money, but obviously there are people who are in shambles right now. Our economy is not necessarily doing so well. It's benefiting people who have investments and are rich, but it's not necessarily benefiting the poor. But that, of course, is a different discussion. I'm trying to say
ties a lot more into tariffs and the other things that Trump is talking about. So
which we wanted to talk about
at a later date.
Yeah. After, isn't it the 12th that they're going to talk about that? Or is that just with North Korea? I don't know.
I think that we should give the Trump tariffs a little bit of time. I think everybody's really jumping on it right now as this is the most important thing that's going to happen right now. But I think in order to enact or like see results of whatever these things are doing, it'll take some time. I think this is another one of Trump's ways of saying, hey, look over here, when he's using his executive powers to get out of the Mueller investigation on this side. So it's like, I think it's more based on evoking executive power and trying to avoid prosecution on this side whilst talking about tariffs on this side.
I agree, absolutely. And I think what Congress is doing, investing in the long game is really smart. You'll notice, if you look back in history, the U.S.'s rise to power currently, right? We're a superpower in the world. We might not necessarily be the strongest superpower for very long if we look at where we're going, but we have a huge military presence all over the world, right? And this is mainly due to we had an economic boom, I believe, after World War II and leading into the 60s. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ivan. I'm guessing here.
Yeah, I would say that the transition of U.S. to the number one global power occurred during the Suez Canal crisis. Okay. So before the U.S. was the dominant power, the U.K. was the dominant power. Yes. And in 1956, there was the Suez Canal crisis, in which case the UK kind of had to beg for money and help from the United States. This is traditionally seen as the point of transition from the UK being the number one dominant power in the world to the US. Again, this also ignores kind of the power and prominence of the USSR in terms of...
Right.
Well,
you guys are always pushed aside. We all know that.
But this is mostly focused on the dominant currency and therefore the dominant economy. And if you look at, since 45, where are American troops stationed? Germany. Still, American troops are in Germany.
Why would
American
we
troops are in Korea. American troops have presence in Africa, in East Asia, in South America, and the Caribbean. There have been multiple incursions into the Caribbean. And so American troops are stationed across the world and in the Middle East, of course, with the conflicts in Afghanistan, Iraq, air bases in Saudi Arabia, American incursion into Syrian airspace with military strikes. So we see there's a lot of American military presence across the world since 45 and really since 56.
Well, right, exactly. And I believe during those time periods, American scientists were getting a lot of funding to make advancements in the scientific world. So those two may not necessarily be correlated, but one could maybe make that assumption. So I'm trying to say that when our economy is focused on science and making scientific advancements, our economy booms and is very prosperous. So it's something to marvel at. One, that the United States is making all these scientific advancements that'll change the world, sending someone to the. I know you're sending someone to the moon. I know you're going to say something about the USSR going to the moon first. We all know at the, Sputnik, they sent that dog too, didn't they? Not necessarily the Russians. But look, they sent people to the moon with power of a graphing calculator, computing power of a graphing calculator, right? So imagine what we could do now if we were funding it correctly. Back then, that sort of drew a lot of scientists from around the world to want to do research in the United States and thus progress science as a whole further. So I really think that, funding science should be an absolute priority of the Trump administration. And it could really, this guy, he cares about his public image. So I don't understand why he's not trying to Paul person, welcome to the party. I don't see nice science emotes.
Hit him with the science.
Yes, science. But so I don't necessarily see why this guy in power doesn't understand that if he just funds the correct scientific agencies, he can have all of his, he can have his wall, but he can also look really good at the same time. So I don't know. That's my opinion.
Funding things like the wall is it's particularly nonsensical.
Yeah, of course.
Whereas funding for basic life sciences. So basic life sciences would include things like cancer research, diseases of all sorts of research. So whether we're talking neurological diseases, Alzheimer's, things like that. So basic life science is the ability to research into how the human body functions and how the human body functions under a variety of diseases or neurological deficiencies, etc. So it's an incredibly important thing. And we keep saying, like, we're never going to get the cure for cancer. Well, we're never going to get the cure for cancer because it's such a tremendously complicated thing. If we believe we'll never get the cure for cancer, it's not true, because we have certain abilities to treat cancer and certain developments in understanding how different cancers work. Again, breast cancer isn't the same thing as prostate cancer, isn't the same thing as pancreatic cancer. So it's small steps that go in various leaps and bounds in different directions. And without the proper research funding, you won't be able to get that done. Whereas a wall is a physical thing that you can stand next to, but doesn't really accomplish anything.
Right.
Really, that's what everybody is saying, including like U.S. government agencies, that increased digital things would be better there. But so instead of spending the money there, put it into research for diabetes or physical education in schools. But whatever.
Right. And Paul, we love to be people's background noise. Thanks for stopping by, even though you're playing some Overwatch. Ivan, you're absolutely right. I honestly think people who think that we'll never find a cure for cancer are wrong. We just aren't funding it correctly, right? If we put, let's say for 1 year, we put the entire military, I know this is far-fetched and would never happen. We put the entire military's budget into funding cancer research, right? If we put that much money into it, I think we would be leaps and bounds ahead of where we are currently. If not, we would completely cure cancer. I think just 1 year. I think at the rate at which people could get research done and everyone working together, it could absolutely be done. It's just not being funded on the level that it needs to be.
We were talking the last time about what a boon it would be to research to be able to like farm out genetic research to a bunch of different people.
Right.
We also talked about the dangers of what it was. But why was it why could it be such a benefit? It's because you have so many minds applied to the same thing. This idea of crowdsourcing.
Absolutely.
Now, instead of crowdsourcing it with a bunch of amateurs, you take a bunch of funding, dump it into labs across the country, and you have the ability to really have not crowdsourcing, but like scientific minds apply the things that they're trying to research, and you can have so many more discoveries happening at the same time.
Cool. Paul Person, if you could provide the link for that article that you read, maybe we could talk about it.
That was in the New York Times.
Oh,
I
was it?
Just seeing something about that as well.
Paul Person, for audio listeners listening after the live stream, he says, I just read something about breast cancer that would mean 70% of women would not need chemotherapy. That would be a wonderful thing for everyone.
Yeah.
Not just the women who have to get chemotherapy. Chemotherapy.
It's another development in genetic testing.
Oh, great!
So this is actually one of the women, Dr. Ingrid A. Mayer, is from Vandy, which actually my dad was a breast cancer researcher at Vanderbilt University.
Oh, cool.
So, the idea being that you can skip chemotherapy. Chemotherapy. Why is chemotherapy applied? Chemotherapy is a way to. It's a non-targeted way of destroying cancerous cells, right?
Right.
If we can have more targeted application of drugs, then that would be better. A lot of people who have a lot of money can have specific gene sequencing and very targeted application of drugs, etc. But it's a very expensive endeavor in general. As that technology decreases in cost, then we can have a lot more of the drugs that do targeted disruption of cancerous formations be more successful and more applicable. So this is the idea that chemotherapy is just like a shotgun.
Yeah.
And instead we can find through this genetic testing that most women can skip chemotherapy and take a specific drug, a hormone-blocking drug, tamoxifen, and related medicines called endocrine therapy, which have become an essential part of treatment for most women. It reduces the risk of recurrence, new breast tumors, and death from disease. Wow,
that's amazing. And that's is that currently in clinical trials, or that's obviously the other thing?
The study called Taylor X is being published by the New England Journal of Medicine and was to be presented at Sunday. Began in 2006. It's part of the Genomic Health, the company that makes the gene test help pay after 2016. Blah 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 blah. So yeah, it's kind of it was a study, so ongoing. So it was funded by the U.S. and Canadian governments, and then genomic health has taken over a lot of the funding after 2016. So it's a
Cool.
study that's already been done, but it might be ongoing at the same time.
So if cancer researchers are able to get this far with the current level of funding, then just think about it. Imagine what they could do with even just twice the amount of money. I mean, obviously, it's very far-fetched to assume to throw all of the U.S. funding in there, but just imagine twice the amount, right? We would be attracting way more scientists from around the world who are clearly what makes, if you look at any university, you're going to see the majority of scientists are actually, on average, are Indian and Chinese. So we'd be attracting more students from around the world to study in American universities and then getting more jobs in America, thus boosting our economy. It's like, this is, I guess, just a scientist's point of view, and I believe Ivan shares a similar point of view, or not the same point. And it's
I agree completely, because instead of focusing on these physical factory jobs, which are, I mean, it benefits most people in general to have the production costs be lowered. So so let's say that steel is being produced in Japan or China at ridiculously low prices. That is a positive for most people who buy goods. Why? Because the goods that are produced using that steel imported are also cheaper, which makes things like cars cheaper, homes cheaper, everything that is as a result of that chain of resources, right?
Yeah.
Where does it hurt people? Well, steel manufacturing jobs, the conditions of Chinese or other plants. So within the home countries, it might hurt those workers and labor unions, etc. But in general, what we're seeing is a benefit to the majority of producers, or at least that's the basis of the orthodox economic position today. So what can we do? We can create jobs that are more advanced. So using our advanced degrees to do a lot more research would actually boost the economy in greater ways than, say, steel production in the United States. It's not a viable option, and it makes the whole production cost increase versus increasing funding for research in X amount, which would result in Z amount of drugs, research grants, etc. So there's a lot more money to be made, I think, in technological development.
Yeah,
in scientific
absolutely.
research.
I think the United States needs to find its place in the global economy. It can't just look inward and make everything itself, literally, and everything about itself. So there's something to be said, obviously you have to protect your country. So yes, it makes sense to have a large military, maybe not as large as we have, but and so, you have to protect your country, but you have to also give back and be part of this global economy in order to progress humankind. So I don't know. I think it's really important.
The alternative of spending so much money for military defense, etc., if you spent it more in research, along with changes to how the grants were awarded, you could have a lot more labs producing a lot more research overall than what we have in terms of how the funding of money is given to such a select few. So even if the budget is nominally slightly increased, it's not getting spread out as much as you would think.
Exactly. So Paul Person says, think of it if we decided to spend money similar to landing on the moon on cancer, other research instead. Exactly, right. So there's something to be said. We should be funding NASA and space exploration. That's the next frontier, as the Star Trek said. But I think maybe I'm making that up. But I didn't watch Star Trek. But yeah, so that's an important place to put money into. I mean, we wouldn't have a lot of the things that we currently have without NASA. In terms of technology, but we could also be funding the cure for cancer and cure for AIDS, cure for HIV, cure for these types of things. I know people who currently live with HIV have it a lot better off, a lot more of a better time than they did in the 70s, but so clearly we've made progress in that respect, but there is still much more progress to be made. And of course,
there is a lot more funding going into NASA. Julien, can you throw up the percent change graphic that we have?
Sorry, was it in this one? No.
It's in the AAS omnibus thing.
AAS. That's this one.
No, that's the Atlantic.
Oh, sorry. I'm missing it.
There you go. So if you look
sorry.
at NASA research, it's getting a bump. But interestingly enough, NASA is getting the smallest percent change of anything, even though Trump was most interested in NASA getting more funding.
Right. And we did talk about that a little earlier. It's probably because he likes big shiny things, right? So
yeah, and exploration is actually having the greatest amount of percent change in terms of NASA's budget development. If you scroll down a bit, there's a table, and it says NASA Space Technology and NASA Exploration. So you see that they percent change for fiscal year 17 is 10.7 and 10.8 respectively. So those are beneficial to NASA's budget.
I see.
Hello, Yellow Ducky.
What's up, Yellow Ducky? Welcome to the show. So mainly just saying you already talked about that. Okay. Well, exactly. So oddly enough, Trump is taking or wants to take away money from NSF and NIH and organizations like that, but he wants to give more money to NASA, it's just so strange. But I mean, we've been living with this in America and also people around the world, for the better half of a year and a half, 2 years now. So, and he's still got 2 more years. Oh my God. I guess this shouldn't come as a surprise, but it kind of does at the same time. But luckily, again, we've said that our Congress is sort of giving some sort of resistance to President Trump's proposed changes to these types of things. And that's really where the government, the United States government and its structure has the checks and balances. That's a very important thing. Otherwise, we would end up having all sorts of dramatic changes all of the time. It'd be crazy. Yvonne, you had a question about grants before, or was that already answered?
I think we're
discussed
kind of looping around and doing the same kind of thing. I think in general we've covered a pretty good discussion of scientific funding and scientific there's no general goal, I think, for when Congress gives this kind of budget. But I think one of the interesting things is that the CDC will be allowed also, as part of this omnibus, to invest in research into gun violence in America.
I'm sorry, say that again. I got a text message that I shouldn't have been reading. Sorry about that.
The CDC will be allowed to invest in in studying gun violence.
Okay, yeah, sure.
So as there was a bill passed in 1996, or the Dickey Amendment passed in 1996, and some of it was included in 2012, that none of the funds be made available to to promote gun control for the CDC. So this would limit the ability for the CDC to study gun violence. Mm-hmm. But this has been lifted as part of the omnibus, so that the CDC can actually instead research into gun violence in the U.S. So whereas before it was against the law, now it's available to do so.
Okay, well, all right. So I guess we should be researching the psychological nature of why someone would use a gun for such a thing. Is that part of the research funding, or are they specifically just researching trends in gun violence? Do you know?
So I think that they'll be researching trends in gun violence.
I suppose, and then that'll probably just help other politicians' arguments against gun or for gun violence, because you know how everyone in media likes to cherry pick their data, so this will just add to that data pool, I suppose. But it could also obviously help in some ways.
I think any amount of research into gun violence is a positive thing, as the amount of research has been restricted for no more reason than the gun lobbies don't want us to be able to do that.
NRA, right. And
so allow for greater research, tell us what's happening, and then we can make efforts to improve the safety of educators, students, and citizens across the U.S.
Right, and Divine Hillstorm says, I think this is a good place then. I think if we spend more money on science, everything in the United States in terms of quality of life will improve. That and school education. We both agree, Divine Hillstorm.
A good note to end on.
Good note to end on. Thank you very much. Vaughn,
Yep.
I think this was a great podcast. We had a good turnout, way better than we usually do. Thanks so much for coming out, Paul Person, Divine Hillstorm, and Yellow Ducky 2004. A great year. The last year that the NIH had funding.
That's really funny.
That we actually talked about that. Yellow Ducky 2004 was the peak of the NIH funding, and they've been declining ever since. But we here at Hungover Gaming like to end our podcast every single week in a song in a segment called Hungover Radio. This is where you, the listener or viewer, who is not on Twitch, but you could send in one if you have one on the top of your head. You get to send in your music, whether you wrote, produced, or want to play some sort of song. At the end of our podcast, we will play it in the audio portion and the video portion as well, and link it to, if you wrote the song or played the song, we'll totally give you all the clicks and all that sort of stuff. So thanks so much for everyone coming out. Yvonne, I think we did a good job. This was a good topic. Yvonne's topic, mind you. My topics are really bad.
Come off.
I just talk about E3 and video games. But war
interesting topics
is not needed anymore, says Divine. Also interesting topics. But yeah, so you can send in your music. If not, I will pick a song. Yvonne, do you have a song?
No.
I should think of one.
All of my songs get rejected, so I'll quit for the next few weeks.
Do they?
Thanks, Brooke.
Brooke is also in the chat. I forgot. I'm sorry. No, she said hi earlier. Just did not contribute to the discussion, except for good talk. Thank you very much, Brooke. We had a good time talking to you guys.
Divine Hellstorm like them both.
Of course. I need to find a song because I forgot to find a song. Let's find one. That's an ad. What's a really good video game song so we don't get a copyright strike?
A really good video game song?
Guys. The Halo theme song. Undertale Megalovania. I hear Undertale has some excellent music. So we'll be playing. Brooke has been working as she does. We're going to play this song. But I won't play it for the audio. for you guys in Twitch. We're going to play because I don't know how to do that at a reasonable level. I don't know how it's going to sound. I don't want to break the stream.
Okay, sounds good.
I'll have to test it out later, and then we can just do that for the end. But that will be next week. Yvonne, do we have a topic for next week?
I don't know, but we do have the Hungover Movie Club named TBA.
Yes.
So Battle Royale 2, find it on Netflix.
Battle Royale 2 we will be watching throughout the week, and we will do a review next week because, Battle Royale games are a dime a dozen nowadays. It's going to be in Call of Duty, Fortnite, the biggest game in the world. We're going to be talking about Battle Royale 2, the movie. The Japanese anime. It's not an anime, but definitely watch that movie and tune in for our review discussion, as it totally ties into every video game ever made now. So thanks so much for coming out, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the talk. I'm Julian.
And Ivan. Bye.
Bye.